Call the meeting to order. Call the roll. Oh, Arlen.
Trustee Fenton. Here. Trustee Dodge. Here. Trustee Calandrello.
Here.
Trustee Healy.
Here.
Trustee Katsinas.
Here.
Trustee Milani.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of August 17, 2020 Committee of the Whole minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Fenton.
move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole on August 17, 2020.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Milani.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Orland Park Fair Center South Parking Lot Development Agreement.
I'll entertain a motion to move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of the development agreement for the Orland Park Prayer Center South Parking Lot located at 16530 to 16650 South 104th Avenue and 10440 West 167th Street.
So moved.
Second.
Give us just a really brief outline of this.
Okay, so the Prayer Center is proposing to expand their parking by 147 spaces and consolidate with the existing site. As many of you are aware, there's significant demand for and traffic issues that are caused by the amount of traffic to the site. So this should help alleviate some of that, and the development agreement is just memorializing some of the conditions there. So,
Are there any questions?
Mayor Pico.
Trustee Dodge.
It seems pretty straightforward. What are the future plans that they have? I know they need the parking, trust me. Go past this all the time.
We've had discussions with them in the past about this site in particular and building potentially an office space or something along those lines, but at this time, really the only need is for parking. So right now, that's all the discussions have entailed, and in the future, perhaps it could be a secondary or I guess tertiary use, given they have the prayer center and the community center already on site.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Milani.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Keith, you have to vote.
Aye.
Agenda initiative, COVID-related public information signs used village-wide.
Trustee Dodge, I believe this is your initiative. So.
Yeah, so Mayor Pico, thank you, and thanks staff for taking a look at a couple things. So recently, George, can you project what's on the agenda items or no?
Can we? No.
All right, they're in the board packet, and if you would go to image 4 in the JPEG. My wife and I were in New York State in July, and we came across this, and we saw a similar sign in a number of the municipalities there. And as I've talked to George about this, I think we do a number of informational signs about CDC guidelines, social distancing, wearing masks, et cetera. We all know the guidelines. And I know we do this, George, if that's correct, at our facilities? That's correct. And so what about this particular sign, I was curious, and this was on top of Mount Defiance overlooking Fort Ticonderoga, as a matter of fact, when they were all over New York State and the municipalities. It's just an information sign. So my question for the board, since this was largely a political sign, corrugated plastic, might we consider doing something that's branded Orland Park and some of our key fairways, just to remind people that while the nation tries to get through this initiative, it doesn't hurt to have a reminder of some of the basic safety protocols. That's essentially the question. Can we put some money into a village-sponsored sign but distribute it widely throughout the village?
Any comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenton.
Looking at all four of the images, I thought that one was the best one, but also number 3 isn't bad, and that's what it says, notice Village Orland Park. Social distancing, wear a mask, maintain 6 feet. If you have a fever, don't enter. That's another informational one, especially with the little emoji, since everybody's so into emojis lately. I agree with Trustee Dodge on this. I don't think we need to go the corrugated route. Those are very expensive. I'm sure we could do something, for example, I'm just using this because it's up here, but this weight, which is just the heavier cardboard. The more information, the better, just to remind people, because I'm sure a lot of people, get out of their cars and don't think about it, then they get to the door of a business and they have to go back to the car to get their mask, so might just help.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Malani.
Yeah, we already do this in the Village Hall, and most of our public-facing buildings all have signs that are purpose-built for.
I think all of our buildings have them, correct, George?
Yes, all of our buildings have some type of
Right.
signage.
And most businesses are, already putting up signs, and there are signs pretty much everywhere. And, we're constantly reminded about what we should be doing. And, I think it's a great idea to have the signs out there, but at the same time, do we need another sign? No. And if we put something out, cardboard, water's going to ruin it. And to be quite honest, we're already 6 months into this pandemic, and I think we're well aware of what we need to do. It's kind of like telling your kid to go out in a snowstorm and play in barefoot, and then when he comes inside, tell him to put his boots on. I think it's a little too late to start reminding people what they do. I think we're already down that path, and I don't think someone's going to see it and then just turn around and go, wait, I didn't check my temperature today, I'm going to go home. There's no sense to repeat the information that they already know.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Calandrello.
I would support this getting more public information. I know we're going into the winter months. It might be a good idea to help some of our businesses with more professional looking signs, maybe a village sign like this. It can't hurt. They're not that expensive, especially with Orland Park and how many people who come visit us, particularly during the holiday season. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a little more information. It can't hurt. And I'm sure it's not going to be that big of a dollar amount to do that. Those are just my thoughts.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Healy.
From my opinion, it's not a bad idea, but I think we're a couple months late with it. I think we're in the back nine of this pandemic, at least I hope we are. But the other thing, it just gives me the other thing. If we see these around the village, it reminds me of like Big Brother's always watching. So I just don't want it's just, I agree with Mike that this stuff is fundamental and people have all heard it and time and again. So.
Mayor Pecan?
Trustee Dodge.
The argument for this is simply, we're not done yet. I'm pretty sure that deaths are flat in state of Illinois. Infections are going to do what they do based on testing, but I don't think we're out of the woods yet. There's more than a few press articles from legitimate sources about heading into the flu season, which could exacerbate where we are. There's plenty of scientific evidence that they really don't have their arms fully around this virus, and which is the nature of science and data. So to me, these signs, these corrugated plastic signs like you see on yard signs for lawns, they're handfuls of dollars per. Thought it'd be a great way to get our brand out and reinforce the message. It's not we're too late, it's reinforcing the message in what could be a tough flu season, compounded by the fact that we don't have our arms around COVID. So I get that there's a difference of opinion. It's pretty simply a community reminder for people to take individual responsibility for themselves and contribute to a community cause, which is until, let's say, the CDC blows the whistle that says all clear, vaccine is safe, vaccine's generally available, and/or we're sure medical science has fully thought through and developed protocols for treatment, I think this is a good idea, which is why I brought it forward.
Any other comments? So remind the board, we're just voting at this point to see if staff's going to do a bunch of research on this and then come back with the research. So that's what the consensus vote is here. Are there any other comments? Call the roll for having staff look into this.
Fenton,
Yes.
Dodge,
Aye.
Calandrello,
Aye.
Healy,
No.
Katsinas,
Aye.
Malani,
No.
Pico.
No. So go ahead and look into it.
Will do.
Fernway Subdivision Roadway and Ditch Improvements 2020 Bid Award and Construction Observation Service Proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani.
I move to recommend to the village board to accept the bid from PT Farrow Construction Company of Joliet, Illinois for the Fernway Subdivision Road and Ditch Improvements 2020 in the amount not to exceed $1,026,406.77, which is $933,406.77 plus $93,000 contingency. And I move to recommend to the village board to accept the proposal for construction observation services for the Fernway Subdivision Roadway and Ditch Improvements 2020 from Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited of Rosemont, Illinois, in an amount not to exceed $83,566.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Okay, call the roll.
Trustee Malani,
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas,
Aye.
Trustee Fenton,
Aye.
Trustee Dodge,
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello,
Aye.
Trustee Healy,
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. And a reminder to the folks in Fernway, after this year, there's another 3 years of this. And this is because when the roads get in this bad of a state of repair, we have to completely rebuild them. And that's where we're at here. That's one of the reasons why we're spending so much effort to try and get everything else just repaved, because it's not nearly as expensive for us to do in the long run. So, thank you for bearing with this long-term project, but it needed to be that because of the expense on a year-on-year basis to rebuild those roads.
Village Hall boardroom renovation.
Could you please show us the presentation?
If I could just briefly first introduce this. So this is a result of a 2019 security survey for the building that brought some issues to light with this particular room, requiring some changes, and as part of those changes, initiated a number of other updates and items to be looked at in the room at the same time, at which time Public Works brought in an architect to prepare some concepts for the room. And we want to present those to you tonight and get some feedback on the preliminary direction before we take them to the next level and develop a budget figure around them.
I just want to also introduce Grant. Grant Courier is going to be giving the presentation, and his associate is Kimberly Larson.
Toys.
Good evening. I am Grant Courier, president of Linden Group Architects in Orland Park, Illinois. Proud business to be here. And with me is Kim Larson, one of our interior designers. So we thought we'd run you through the preliminary package that we've put together thus far that kind of outlines a refresh for this space, which is around 30 years old. We came through and did a survey, and also we had these existing documents and put together this as-built plan. You can go to the next view. So on the top of the page, we have the existing dais, the boardroom space, and then these flanking areas. What we're looking at is incorporating staff seating since the Secretary of State has left. So these would be permanent, smaller dais versions for staff to seat at. And we've also incorporated some doors here for exiting out of this bullpen space and this bullpen space. And then we'll go through some of the other slides, but this would be a new podium station, given that the technology in the space will be kind of recharged, redone. The roll-down screen is going to go away for television monitors. This is an as-built of the second floor. Basically, you have the 2.5-story open space and the mezzanine above, the upper hallways, and the support bathrooms. And while we're looking at this plan, what we were trying to incorporate was an AV room for control of the new system, and also a storage facility on this mezzanine space. There's an existing ramp here for handicap access to the patio, which we want to preserve. So we're going to utilize these doors for access to the mezzanine. In conversations with staff, it seems like the mezzanine really has not been completely utilized over the years, and it's some square footage that we can use to better the operation of the room. So this is that second floor space with the new storage room and the new AV room. We'll look at an elevation of it, but we're going to incorporate some one-way windows here so that AV operator can have a good view to the dais and the room functions. And then there'd be an open space, which we want to try and preserve to keep some openness up there. And our thought was to also retain the railing system, since it's somewhat historical to the award-winning design that Perkins and Will did back in the day. Go to the next image. So this is an elevation looking straight at the dais to the north, and a couple of the high points here. These shaded areas of the glass would have a film applied to them for a little bit more security from the north. And then we were looking at kind of recharging the dais with a new finish on the bottom. We would take out the carpeting and put a more permanent laminate there to tie in with the architecture and the wood of the dais, make it look a little more finished. And the gap below the top counter, we're looking at filling in with a complementary laminate or finish, and that'll give us a place to put the name badges. It'll also help conceal the tablets and iPads or laptops that trustees and the mayor are using. And then we're also looking at infilling those gaps in the side, just to have a little bit more consistency to the architecture of it. Carpeting would be replaced. On this image, you can see some new lighting. Our electrical engineer came through and did a quick photometric, and we're averaging about 12-foot candles in this space. We're looking for 40 to 50 for a meeting room space to have enough light to be able to see what you're looking at. I'm sure everybody has sensed that frustration without having enough light. So our plan is, we're looking at now is recharging the lighting, adding some pendants, going with all LEDs, and a control system for it. This also shows the monitors, which would be flanking the dais for the public to view. Next slide. This would be looking at the west wall. The acoustical fabrics on the acoustical panels, we would like to change out and freshen up a little bit. Everything would be repainted. These are the 3 light fixture pendants that we're proposing that would come down from this center island here. And then on the bottom, these 2 openings here would have the staff areas with a dais feature or a smaller dais feature to complement the existing. This is looking at the south wall and the railing to remain. It would be refreshed and repainted. The added storage room, the added AV room, and this glass system, again, is the one-way glass in a frame which is white painted to match the existing, and the geometry and module actually aligns with the proportions of the existing glass. And the back pinup wall would be recovered with a new acoustical material. The chair rail would be replaced and new paint. These existing acoustical panels would be recovered with the material that Kim will show you. You can run to the next one. Just a placeholder for a new podium feature, which we would incorporate the jewel for the Orland Park logo. And that would have a wireless mic to it. So here we're identifying some of the new finishes. We put on the dais there the color palette. I want to pass that around.
Ooh, sorry.
But we're looking at 3 paint colors, a flat for the ceiling, basically white, and if you scroll up a little bit,
We do this in that part.
we have an accent color on the back wall of the staff areas, and then a general paint color. And I'll let Kim run through some of our carpet options.
So this first option that we have is a tri-mix of 3 different carpet tiles as we've laid out in the front. So it all has the same base, and then additionally it will introduce the green stripes as shown below. It'll give some variation to this base. Currently we just have 1 tile, it's just quarter turned. Versus this one, we can add in the green, the Orland Park green, to this base, as well as keeping a neutral base to the room. The 3 panel fabrics, as you see here, are noted per the elevations, but the goal is with these acoustical panels is to reupholster the current locations that we have. Overall, to lighten them, make them blend in with the walls, and not have them be as much of a focal point. So overall, the majority of those panels would be this lighter tone. We are using an additional, more decorative panel fabric. It has a metallic flake to it. It's also tackable to be used on this back surface, so it'll be of interest at eye level. Also in the elevations, we had a darker panel. As we've accented in this blue, is in a similar mindset. We're using a gray tone. We have recommended a vinyl base. It's a little more substantial than your current, which is just a black 4-inch vinyl base, but it'll wear and perform well. The other item on the page right next to the acoustical ceiling is a Mecco shade fabric or a roller shade fabric. This was a topic that was of concern with the glare that is experienced, especially during sunset. Because of the number of different shaped windows on this wall, it's tricky, but they can do motorized shades. We're reviewing how to do it cost effectively and to properly prevent glare in the space. Alternately, we had a second pattern, carpet tile, that we have just in the other room. It's more of a border, so we were using a general border tile shown as Grant is showing. And then in the main 2-story volume, we have a subtle green striping or linear pattern to it. Yeah, it's in the same gray tone as we've had shown on the floor. And then this is the reflected ceiling plan for the first level. As Grant mentioned, we had 3 larger drum pendants proposed for this center soffit here. Additionally, on the lower areas, we had liked to provide additional can lighting or general illumination for those areas. We have shaded them in yellow. It's a little hard to see on the screen, but to hopefully just increase that general illumination. Also, we are providing decorative sconces to help accent these areas along for the new staff seating. So we have 2 on the face of each column, and then also 1 as the entry into this space. Those will help just brighten, kind of make the space a little bit more inviting and bring the lighting down to eye level. And this is the second floor reflected ceiling plan. So you can see in the 2-story volume, we have those 3 drum pendants as well. And then maintaining that circular recessed fixture in the center where the mezzanine will still show. And then in the storage and new AV space, we would have recessed can lighting in there.
So we're looking at relamping, rather than changing up fixtures, see there's lighting posts in the larger space. Fluorescent lamp at this point, so we would change it out to LED, get some more light above that. Last one.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments? Happy to go through them.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Fenton.
So the big question is, what's the price tag on this?
We have been going back and forth fine-tuning this package for the presentation tonight. We have a couple contractors engaged helping us with budgetary pricing, and we're formulating that, trying to get it organized for staff and the board to review. We know this carpeting is $30 a yard installed. The electrical is a little trickier with the number of fixtures, but we're going to put together a nice option list for you and make decisions from there.
But we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
My gut feeling is we're going to be north of 100, yes.
Just 100?
I don't have.
I mean, I know you're just estimating. I'm just equating it to how much we could get done at a park.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with your park budgets, but as soon as we have everything together, we'll share it with staff and we can decide how you want to proceed.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calandrello.
Just a couple of quick questions. So I noticed on, you don't have to go through the screen, but we're still having an unobstructed view from the dais to the exit for us. I know one of the issues, we talked about safety, and for me, I don't think anything's wrong in this room, but I understand we have safety issues that we could improve. So did anyone give you direction that an increased safety for the board members would be obstructing our path out of here? Because as of right now, we have no unobstructed path to leave the dais if something bad happens. And at least with this drawing, it's still an unobstructed view. So we don't have any safety benefit from that. Did anyone even talk to you about that? About increasing that? Here, so
there are new exits that have been installed.
Right, but I see the new exit, but I don't see, it's still.
Well, the problem is you can't go through the wall to the outside.
Right, but you can make a wall from, say, where the staff desk is to the, so at least, I just thought that would be something, to me, it's not about making this more pretty, it's about making it safer. At least that's I don't want to spend that much money, to be honest with you, but we haven't improved the safety. So that's one point I want to bring up of you wanted, if we're talking about design, is to increase the safety on that point. Go ahead, George.
There are a number of other safety measures that are just not shown here right now. And we've included them previously, but we'll reiterate them to the board. But as far as that is one of them, is to, right now, access. So I think what you're saying is a kind of wall from the stair.
Ideally, a wall from the stairs to, at least on our side, you might have to make it, even for aesthetics purposes, but at least a wall, so if we have to duck out quickly, we have at least some protection.
Okay.
And I guess I'll wait for the details and other things, but I have some questions about the podium, if it's being reinforced and stuff like that. So I don't know how we talk about that, but that was one thing we always, right. Chief McCarthy and Joe always talked about, is making this safer.
And that was first, and the whole reason we're having these conversations was to make it safer. So there are a number of other, yeah, and we'll get those details to you.
Okay.
But that's good feedback right there as far as the access immediately from the dais out.
I know you can't blow a wall, or you could, but it'd probably be really expensive. But if you do a wall here, at least we get access, especially if we're doing the staff tables. Like I said, I'm not really thrilled spending that much money on staff tables, but I think safety.
Notice he wants it on his side, not yours, Jim.
Whatever
No, that's
side.
already shown.
Whatever side you want.
Oh, no.
So they're on both sides.
They're on both sides, at least to the, you move us around, so I don't know. I can, anyway. So that's just my one thing, and I'll look forward to some other details about the dais itself being safer.
Right.
It does look like you would have a sight line to this door from that side, but you'd have to cross across the room to get to it.
I think that's the point, is to not have
Not
to
to
cross
have
the
that.
room.
And you guys are designers, so I don't know if, that's one thing that we've always been talking about. We're kind of,
Well, yeah, obviously you're somewhat limited by the architecture of the space, and the way the dais was originally placed there kind of pushed as far forward north as it could.
So, and I don't know if this is an option, but if you see how the staff table kind of jogs to the left, if it jogged more to the right towards the dais, it connected that way.
Yeah, there's no reason why it just couldn't run straight and not have that angle to it. We were just trying to open up
Yep, right.
the views to it. But.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Healy?
I've been fortunate enough to on vacations to visit some state houses from Vermont and Oregon and Tennessee and such, and I find them very, the art and the art and the tapestries and the paintings and the murals can be very inspiring. I look at our conference room is no different than the rest of them up here in that I've seen around, but to me it's uninspiring. It's meant to not offend anybody. And I would much rather have, if it were up to me, I'd have some prints or whatever of historical people who would promote inspiration as far as truth and honesty and voting for the good as a whole, or manifest destiny or whatever. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but it's that I would think would be fine and inspiring, and send a message to people that there are people that we want to not only honor, but that we also want to look at them for some inspiration as far as how to conduct ourselves in public and on the board floor. So anyway, I'd like to. All we have is the seal of the city out there. It doesn't do anything for me, but and the American flag is put over there. Is that the place for it or whatever? Is there a better place to make it stand out? So I think a little, if there's any way to inject some patriotism or some history, I'm all for that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mayor Pecan?
Trustee Dodge?
Couple things. There's a number of changes that are recommended here that I certainly wouldn't mind. I guess my question for staff is, why now?
So if the board may recall, a few months ago, staff undertook with cooperation with the police department, we undertook a safety or a security assessment of the building. And we're little by little, as the budget allows, we're going to implement that. DAS was the primary focus for the safety enhancements for this room. And as far as the actual cost, and then, so once we got to that point, then we were looking at just a fresh coat of paint, new carpeting. But the primary focus of this process was security enhancement.
Thank you. And there's a number of things that we can work on here, so it doesn't have to be all or nothing, correct?
Correct. We're just, yeah.
So we'll see what the costs are, and we'll figure out the timing from there. In terms of decor, otherwise, I would be perfectly content with us as a municipality keeping it fairly, I don't know, fairly dull. is that the right word? From an aesthetics perspective, is I think we need to be very mindful of any images we want to put up here. I certainly wouldn't mind photography of things in Orland Park if we're going to do something like try and, put a little bit more color on the walls. But that's just personal opinion. I guess we'll see what happens when we get to that point.
Any other comments? All right, I guess I'll close with, I understand the exercise because there are some security enhancements we all know need to take place. We've all been briefed on those. I think there's also some things from a functionality perspective that are an issue as we see currently, and obviously it'd be nice to have staff over on the side and leave more room for residents up in front. I think that, obviously that happens in a building that's, over 30 years old. So those types of things happen. I think we still have to be mindful of the times and the money that we have. So we may have to do these in phases. Also, I do know that a lot of this work can be done in-house at a much less cost because we do have staff that are very, very good at moving walls and doing electrical and that kind of stuff. They do it regularly. It saves the village a ton of money by doing it in-house. So we have to look at all of that stuff before doing anything. Obviously, security being the biggest mindset. And I also know that, we do have there are some carpet issues and things like that based on, the previous wear and tear on the area. So some of that's going to have to be done anyways eventually. So we have to factor all of that in with what we do. And I realize this is just a first go at it. It's a very good first go. And then we'll just look at what the budget is and look what things need to be, kind of as we've looked at our capital before. It's what has to be done and, what's more of a nice to have. So.
And I think maybe if we can just, are you looking for some feedback on like colors? Would that help?
I think we could get 7 different opinions on colors. I don't think colors is the time for that. I think the time for that is once we decide what we're going to do. I mean, we've got a bunch more agenda items, another 25 minutes to go here, and we've got a bunch more agenda items, and we have people here to speak to. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Grant. Good to see you. Too.
Finley Creek stabilization, September 2020 update.
So can you give us a briefing on Tinley Creek stabilization, please?
Sure can. So this is an update from our last meeting. And just quickly, we'll just share a brief history of where we were, what are the new updates on cost and design, and our update with MWRD, and few recommendations and next steps. We know that Tinley Creek banks are eroding both sides. Our field visit even more confirmed even more erosion than we have seen before. The creek is privately owned, and it should be maintained by the property owners. MWRD has made it very clear, and it is a fact that village nor MWRD is responsible for the maintenance of the creek. I just sharing some pictures that you may have seen before, just showing the erosion in the creek. Trees are falling down, and in fact, you may not be able to clearly see it, but in the background there is a tree that is in the middle of the creek, which was causing flow issue at the time when we were out there. Just some more pictures of the erosion. Just to show you on this picture in the top left, when the water is high, it goes up as high as to that retaining wall on the right-hand side. If you look at the bottom, that you'll see that there's algae on that wall that shows that the water that goes up that high. Some more examples where some of the improvements that were implemented by the homeowners on their individual basis, they're eroding themselves also. This is the worst case scenario where creek is eroding so far inland that some of the properties that are right next to it are in danger of actually either collapsing or they will require major repair for them to stay up. This is how one of the property owner in Quail Hollow have done it. So in 2014, Village worked with MWRD and we got a $3.1 million commitment by MWRD to spend on the creek stabilization. MWRD completed the design and funds were allocated and were available for implementation. However, majority of the property owners did not offer their property without any compensation. And MWRD's policy is that they would not pay any compensation for right-of-way when they're spending money on the improvement of a creek. So the project is stalled since 2014. At the time, 31 easements were required, and if you take the $3.1 million that MWRD committed for the project, it was as if MWRD was paying $102,000 to each property, and that was their reason that they do not want to pay any compensation for right-of-way. At the time in 2014, 9 easements were granted by homeowners, 22 easements were not. Utility crossings were not pursued because the easements, 100% easements were not available. Also, Army Corps and IDNR permits would be required at that time also and even now, but those were not pursued either. So what we did is after our last meeting, we went back and we performed the following objects. For task 2014 design and scope was reevaluated. We also looked at if in the last 6 or 7 years that design has to be expanded. And then we also looked at that are there additional areas where that erosion has expanded that we need to expand the project limits. And then we also came back, which we'll share with you in a minute, is the total cost for expanded scope. So based on the new design and new scope, 44 properties are impacted by the erosion issue, 13 are additional. The overall length of the erosion is about 2.8 miles, and easements are needed or required from all properties. And after those easements are done, we will be looking for utility and permits from Army Corps and IDNR. And then we have also had some discussions with MWRD. MWRD is still committed to the project, and there's a few more details that I will share with you. And based on this evaluation, I'll show you some.
Excuse me 1 second, Krishid. Could anyone coming in please take a chair? If there's no chairs available, you'll have to go outside.
I'll share with you some pictures of how some of the improvements will look like. This is one improvement where vegetation, retaining wall, and riprap was used. This is not our project. Just wanted to show you how some of the improvements might look like. It is another place where rocks were used, but with vegetation to control the erosion. Another picture where a lot more rocks were used. The reason here it was used is because of the water velocity was so high at this corner that it was eroding. That tree was in danger, so this was the solution that was implemented. These are some before and after pictures on the left-hand side. The right side of the picture is eroding very aggressively, and that's how it was improved on the right-hand side by bringing in some additional dirt and sloping it towards the creek, and that's how the creek was stabilized. Again, not our project. Just another picture on the left-hand side. Again, the creek is eroding on the right-hand side, and the right picture shows the improved condition.
Yeah, we get it.
Okay. So four elements will be implemented: engineering soil lifts, retaining walls, flow deflection or reflection, redirection, and then improvement of vegetations. Those are the 4 different types of implementation we'll do. Here is the cost summary. The expanded scope, where 44 properties will be improved, our cost estimated at almost $6 million. At present, we are using a 20% contingency based on a lot of unknown factors. And then if the board approves this cost or this type of investment, it would be equal to about $135,000 benefit to each property to those 44 properties. MWRD updated their cost estimate to $3.7 million, which was originally $3.1 million, about $600,000 more. So the difference between our cost estimate with the expanded scope and what MWRD is still committed to is about $2.25 million. Just a quick summary of what I just said. One more way to look at it, on any roadway project or transportation project, we generally have a 70-30 or 80-20 split. On this one, if we go with that cost differences, it would be about 62% for MWRD and 38% for Village. We met with the MWRD on August 13 and also had a field visit. MWRD said that they're still committed to this project and they still have the funds available. That $3.1 million is still available. And they may take a minor expansion to the project, but they do not believe that they will be able to go to a $6 million project. Neither the staff showed that interest, and they also said that they believe, according to MWRD staff, that their board may not go for the full project either. They reminded us that it is not their responsibility to maintain the creek, it is property owner's responsibility. And then the last thing they said, that if the village is interested in the expanded scope, then they should consider paying for it. Just a couple suggestions is that if the board agrees that we should commit to the $2.25 million so that we can take advantage of almost $4 million that is coming from the village, from the MWRD. And then the next step is the maintenance cost of the creek. We have estimated that it would be anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000 per year to maintain the creek once, not the creek, the improvements. Once that is implemented, that equates to about $600 to about $1,100 per property per year. The other way to maintain the property is on a per linear foot of creek frontage that each property may have. And one way to achieve that is through a special assessment. And there are details for that that we will be discussing later on. So the next steps, if the board approves or agrees to this additional investment of $2.25 million, the village would go back and set up a meeting with the residents, with MWRD, as soon as possible within the next 2 to 4 weeks. We would need easement agreements from each property owner, hopefully through a voluntary compliance, and then also an acceptance of maintenance cost via an SSA, and also the village's right to access that easement for maintenance. And then we would add the cost to the 2021 CIP budget. If the property owners accept the easement and maintenance cost agreement, then we would proceed with the IGA with MWRD, complete the design, and then we expect to complete the construction by 2022 or early 2023. That's all I have.
Questions and comments?
Chairman?
Trustee Fenton.
First of all, so you're banking on the fact that the residents are going to give us the easements, even though they wouldn't give them to to the Water Reclamation District. And then you're also going to tell them that they're going to get a special assessment that they're going to have to pay anywhere from $600 to $1,100 per year. I don't think that's going to happen. But the other thing is, why the 2.5 difference? Why can't we just do what the Water Reclamation District is recommending for the 31?
7 years difference.
Well, no, they upped it, because it was originally 2 something, and now they've upped it to 3.1 million.
Right, but it's 7 years and all these additional properties and the additional erosion is the problem.
That's exactly right, Trustee Fenton, that there are additional erosion that is happening, and it will continue to happen. So based on the last 2014 design was also based on what the village recommended. And now our recommendation is a little bit more. If we choose to, we can eliminate those properties, but then it will be very difficult for us to defend that why we did some and not the others.
The problem's going to get worse, what you're saying. It's already gotten worse. 7 years, it's gotten way worse. It's going to get more, it's going to get worse, it's going to get more expensive.
That's true.
Right. Okay. Any other questions and comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calandrello.
A couple quick questions is, So you came up with a number of what the benefit to the homeowner is. How do you come up with that number?
Divide the total amount by the total amount of homeowners.
Well, I don't think.
That's how they came up with it.
Okay.
It's their property. We're not taking the property. It remains their property. It's just an easement, like a drainage easement. So we're spending that much, so the average property gets that much value of this project.
Okay, I'll continue my comments. And then another quick question is, Tinley Creek starts in Oak Forest, makes her way through, goes, so that water that creek is benefiting from a lot of people. Orland residents, Tinley, I think it starts from Oak Forest, Tinley, Orland, I think it continues to the Paylesses, if I remember correctly. So I definitely think we need to do the project because it's getting worse. I have a lot of heartburn that we pass on this it improves a lot of people's lives and a lot of water issues. So I think it's something that the village needs to look into spending the money to, because this, I guess, is the argument about public ponds versus private ponds. What's benefiting the greater good? What's benefiting the neighborhood? This is benefiting a couple towns. So that's why I have a little heartburn that we push all this cost to the resident. I think we need to have a hard talk about that. We need to do this, yes. It's just how do we pay for it? Because I have a little heartburn of pushing it all on the residents, if at all any to the residents.
Trustee Callen, go ahead, please.
Oh, you got the mic. Well, right now, the residents, for any portion of this project, of the total costs, they're not going to pay anything. So MWRD has agreed to $3.7 million if they can get the easements. What we're trying to get consensus on is that the village will pay the remaining $2.2 million. So the residents, those property owners, are not going to be paying for that. Where they will be paying is in an SSA for future maintenance. So there's really two decisions. One is the village willing to contribute the additional $2.2 million to do this project? And then second is the enactment of an SSA, because there are going to be ongoing maintenance costs for this.
Okay, so I guess my answer would be yes, we should definitely do it. And like I said, the second part is I'm not comfortable with pushing it all on the residents at this time with the SSA. I think this is a mutual benefit issue, so that's something that I guess we have to address, at least in my opinion, in the future. I think we should get it done because it's getting worse, but then the SSA, let's take our time on that, if you're looking for my opinion.
Any other comments?
Mayor Pico?
Trustee Dodge.
Khursheed and George, these are private property. The creek runs through private property. Yet the Water Reclamation District, Army Corps, et cetera, has the right to tell someone that the creek needs to be updated, improved, water flow governed, correct? And so, this is not necessarily our problem to solve, correct? It's important. I'm not mitigating that. But it's not necessarily our issue. And if I heard you right, the Water Reclamation District Board was perfectly comfortable for us to spend our money to solve this problem. Okay. And I guess then the question is, where else are we going to face a similar problem in the village? Because this goes to precedents, just like the same broader conversation I think we're having on ponds. Private pond, not private pond. Who pays? What's the right fair share? Taxation? The whole thought. And so do we have any other locations in town where this is going to be a similar issue? A creek, which is controlled by Army Corps and Water Rec, flows through private property, but then to get something done, the right thing done, everybody comes looking in our direction?
Not that we know in a creek situation.
Okay, and then do these folks understand, do you think, that it's $1,000 going forward in perpetuity?
They don't, so the next step is if we get consensus on the expanded scope of the project, then there is going to be an open house. It's going to be set up with staff and the residents to kind of go through all of this. So back in when MWRD started this process, or back in the original, had they got the easements, we wouldn't be here today talking about it, and the village would not have paid we wouldn't have to be contributing anything. So right now, MWRD is saying they're gonna increase it a little bit, but that to do the project right, the village is gonna have to.
So I guess then, extending my question, if the residents continue to say no, then what? We can't force the creation of an SSA.
Yeah, if more than 50% say no, so that's why the SSA is kind of a part and parcel with this whole process. So it's going to be a belt and suspenders type process. We're going to have an agreement, and as part of that agreement, it will say that they will not object to the SSA.
Oh, I get it. I just want to put it out there because as this goes forward, right, I mean, it's a problem that we collectively should solve. We're in a position to solve it. I just want to make sure we think through the intended and unintended consequences here, because to me, this is somewhat analogous to you have a water feature on private property. It's gotten to a place where it needs to be maintained. Now the public entities have to step up potentially to pay for this, because easement doesn't mean we then own the creek, correct?
Correct.
It's an easement. So I just want to make sure as we think this through, how does this comport from a fairness perspective with what we're trying to do going forward on private roads, private ponds?
Right.
We'll have to think it through. Thank you.
Good, Trustee Dodd, just one more item for everybody. According to MWRD staff, they believe that this is the last opportunity for us to take advantage of this money. Otherwise, this money will not be available in the near future. Either that or we'll lose it.
Any other comments? So the only comments I'll make on this is I agree that, you know, this is, I mean, this should have been done in 2014. We've basically kicked the can down the road. Now we're dealing with it. And, you know, and the question becomes, how do we force this to happen? Because if it doesn't happen, I mean, I'm getting the emails, my kids are going to die, as are the emails I'm getting. I think we're all getting those emails. And yet nobody there wants to give up an easement. Not giving up your property, it's still your property. It's an easement that the public, all of your neighbors and everyone else is going to spend $6 million to help improve your property. And yet you're holding back giving them an easement. How do we say we want an easement? I mean, we can take a road. How do we say you're going to give us this easement? That's the question that I have, because this is a greater good issue, and we've already cost the Orland Park taxpayers and the Cook County taxpayers an additional almost $3 million because of obstinance.
The board has, in my opinion, the board has the ability to do condemn the property to an easement.
But then we own it.
You own the easement, right, but you don't have to own
Okay.
the property.
Okay.
You can condemn the easement for doing construction work and the maintenance.
Okay.
But then do we have to pay for the maintenance
Maybe.
afterwards?
Well, you really should do the analysis is value of the benefit to the property is part of the equation. And in this case, it looks like the value to each one of those properties well exceeds what the
He said 175,000.
Right.
He said 175,000.
So would we, when they don't maintain it and we have to maintain it, are we going to be able to fine them like we could any other property owner?
And the other thing you can do is a
That's
special assessment inside the special service area.
Okay.
And you don't need 51% of the property owners to agree.
So we do have options.
Correct.
Okay, so is the board in consensus to move forward with looking at all these options and then presenting us the options, everyone? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Perfect. Does anyone mind if we take this pocket annexation, because it's just an update, it's not any direction from us, if we just move it to the next meeting and they'll just be doing more work in the meantime?
If they're going to continue to look at it, that'd be great.
They're
Thank
going to
you.
continue to look at it. Okay.
Are we skipping that?
Yeah, we're skipping that one. We're going to move that to the next board meeting. It's
Are we doing
discussion
next?
only.
Foreclosed property registration champions?
I'll entertain a motion to move to recommend to the village board to approve an ordinance creating a new chapter in the Orland Park Village Code entitled Registration of Foreclosing Mortgage Property, and recommend to the village board to enter an agreement with Property Registration Champions LLC to manage foreclosed property registrations.
So moved.
Second.
George, can you give us a brief synopsis?
I'm going to give this to Greg. Brief.
Sure, this is an opportunity that was brought up by one of our property maintenance inspectors, a registration ordinance, which 3 of our surrounding communities are already doing at the same rates. The company that would run this program would collect those fees for us. They already have the foreclosure data. It's part of their business model to collect that for all the areas that they service. They would then track property owners, maintenance companies, the bank in charge of the property for us, and of that collection fee, they keep 1/3 of it for their services and data usage, and 2/3 of it comes back to the village, which will help us supplement being proactive with property maintenance by bringing on a seasonal property maintenance inspector who could then take this list of properties and proactively inspect them. So obviously it wasn't that many years ago that we saw a bit of a foreclosure crisis, and with the conditions that are out there today, there's a real possibility that that's going to continue to or have a resurgence, that we'll need to be more proactive about protecting the village and the value.
Any questions or comments?
I think it's a great idea.
Trustee Dodge?
Just going to say, if the intended outcome is for us to be able to have the information we need to enforce our ordinances, because we did go through this, as you said, and there were plenty of places where a problem, I think it is a good idea.
Yes. This brings to us both the funds necessary to do that work and the information necessary to do the work with no additional burden to staff.
Mr. Chairman?
Any other comments? Trustee Katsinas?
I spoke to Greg earlier about there's a real issue with foreclosures with squatters. I spoke to a colleague today. There's people that come in, take over a home, and then look for cash for keys. One gentleman, he said, that squatted in a house, 3 of properties that he had, just collected on his last one $8,000 to move. So he breaks into a home, takes possession of it, then gets paid to move. So I guess we have those registered. Are our health codes such that if somebody illegally occupies that, do we have an ordinance if it doesn't have, say, running water, that we can prevent that issue because it creates havoc in a neighborhood?
Yeah, I think there are 2 points to that regard. One is that the building codes that we have adopted do say if there's no running water to a facility that revokes the occupancy of the facility. That's one, and by being proactive and monitoring these properties, because we know where they are and they're registered, we can find those things before they become issues and get the police department involved.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg.
Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Calandrella? Trustee Healy?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. Motion carries. Non-scheduled visitors, Robert Shanklin, and a reminder, you have 3 minutes.
Water, water, water. Thank you. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Robert Shanklin. People call me Terry. Can I take this off?
Yes.
I'm here to represent Eagle Ridge 3, where the pond is going in. We have a pond, and there's a project to put native grass around it. I think it's important you understand that the pond is right in the middle of Eagle Ridge 3, and it's a very serene area, and it's frequented by a lot of people. There's, on any given day in decent weather, there's people fishing, grandfathers with the grandkids, neighbors sitting around commiserating around the pond, people walking around getting some exercise. So looking out the window and seeing this native grass, you put that in the pond, that's going to be right in people's view, right in their face. That's going to be in their front yard. Nobody here has that in their front yard. People that live in my development paid, when they purchased that home, they paid for that view. And that grass, that's really doesn't solve any problems, is going to choke that type of lifestyle right out of the community. So if you don't have it in your front yard, we shouldn't have to have it in ours. And the question is then why? Why do you want to put the grass in? Right? It's not only is it a hideous looking thing, right? It's going to wind up, the reasons are pretty laughable. I'm trying to rush here because I got 3 minutes. Right? Where it talks about primary goals of the shoreline restoration are to prevent further shoreline erosion, remove undesirable vegetation, and enhance the shoreline. If you think that stuff is going to enhance the shoreline, something's wrong. It's a retention pond. There's virtually no current flow in there. Water goes up and goes down by the saturation of the earth. Right? So there's no current flow. And where am I at here? The erosion, there is none. We know that because we maintained that property for 27 years. There was no undesirable plants or anything. It was a nice community center that people frequented. If you're concerned about erosion, you could use riffraff or river rock, what they might call it, right? It's cheap, it's inexpensive.
Time's up.
Really?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to tell you what, you'll see me and my constituents on election day.
That's your right.
You better believe it is.
We have rules on the board floor, 3 minutes for comments. That's standard rules for everyone, and it applies to everyone. Staff, could you please give us an update? I think you have an update here. Sir, this is a boardroom.
So, good evening, everybody. I just want to go through a little bit of our storm water detention system we have. So the stormwater basins really are, their primary function is to serve as the collection of rainwater runoff. The surfaces there are, a lot of impervious surfaces are built during the urban development, and these basins serve to release the water. We saw in the previous presentation how if water gets to the creek too much, too fast, you start to see the erosion occurring. So these basins serve to reduce that flow down to the creeks and that damage to the creeks. It also serves to help flood mitigations for the residents around those ponds, and then also the flooding for downstream as well. So not only the homes around the basins, but downstream as well. You can see some diagrams of that. We've actually been doing this since 2011, so over 9 years now, coming up in 10 years now. We developed a village-wide basin best practice program, and it kind of unifies the approach that we do for all these ponds that are serving as detention basins. As you can see, the goals were set in 2011. We have over 550 stormwater basins. We maintain about 170 of those. Right now, when we kicked off the program, 24 basins were identified, and currently we have 37 basins that are managed with the qualified ecological restoration contractors. You can see a before picture of one of the ponds.
And this is one of the basins that we...
Correct.
Correct?
And this is the after photo you can see of us installed around the ponds. So the primary approach was to use the native vegetation versus the hard edge, as the gentleman noted, as instead of like stone riprap. They are more costly to install and to maintain. We also looked to some of our experts out there, the EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, and others. So that we have seen that these native grasses actually help keep that erosion, and we do have a couple other slides of showing some of that, so I'll get to that shortly. And you can see some of the benefits that we laid out for everybody. Oops, sorry. So just a quick how the approach works is we do a 2 to 3 year establishment period. where existing turf, like the gentleman mentioned, is actually removed and we establish with native plant species. And then the slopes are done. And then after that first established period, then we do a multi-year stewardship maintenance program for the ponds. And you can see the picture before and after, how the cleanliness of the water has improved, the native species around, and you actually can see a fence to stop the goose population on the right side there as well as another protection, just as that pond is getting seeded and so forth.
So just, sorry to interrupt. So just pointing out to everyone that fence is there for the geese while it's being established. Once it's established, the geese don't want to go in there because there's obviously predators in those and they can't see them. Correct. So they like the low mode areas. So having the non-low mode areas actually reduces the goose population, correct?
Correct. They don't like to transition between the water and the land because they're afraid of in between.
So all the goose poop and all that stuff
goes away.
Yep. Okay.
We just noted, the typical best practices is to reduce the turf mowing area. It has little erosion control, or it creates bare spots, wheel tracks. We actually have installed in our development land code as well to install these on all new ponds. So you can see that as well. You can see another pond that we've completed the work around. So that's very nice. Oops, sorry. Lastly, this is actually Eagle Ridge 4 pond. You can see how the edging is eroded on the sides, around the culvert area there as well. And so this is one of the ponds that we are working on this year. That's just a quick timeline of us. We received many complaints about the algae and the edging since 2017. And then this year we put together the project. In the spring we got a contractor on board, and in July here we sent a letter to the residents.
And I'm asking these questions are a little bit leading because I know a little bit about these pond restorations. So essentially what happens, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but we have low mowed grass that we fertilize and we water, and it runs off into the pond, creates algae because there's a lot of nitrogen. It basically chokes off the pond, it chokes off the fish, it chokes off the wildlife, but it also, because it's a retention pond, it does not just retain and go into the ground. It actually goes into the water system, right. And it goes into the water system with a lot more chemicals in it. So the native plantings filter that, so that there's much less nitrogen, much less sediment, and much less garbage and chemicals that go into the water system, correct?
Correct. Thank you. That's a quick overview. I just want to let everybody know about it. Thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Mayor Pico.
Trustee Dodge.
Just broadly, over the years, we've had this discussion a number of times with the residents, and let's face it, you go from mowed grass to native plantings, which some people would regard as weeds, to be blunt, when in fact it does have a purpose as the mayor laid out in terms of what it does to the total water cycle. So, current levels of technology, right? This is a good solution, but it's going to be upsetting aesthetically to a number of people. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's like the ponds out here. They used to be closely mowed. Now they have native grasses around it. They look very nice. It's not all 100 feet. It's a 10 or 15 foot buffer, so there's still mowed grass. It's just a transition. It eliminates geese. It eliminates a lot of problems that you have. You're right, aesthetically, some people like brown, some people like red. I mean, you're not going to be able to please everybody with it, but it's the right thing to do from a maintenance perspective, from a nuisance perspective regarding the geese and all of that, as well as from a water quality perspective. And it's less costly to maintain. So all of the above, it pretty much checks all those boxes for a greater good. What was 30 years ago was the standard is no longer the standard. Would this pond even meet code anymore, Ed? No, it would not. We wouldn't allow it. Right. So I think that that's why we've updated our codes, and since we're responsible for maintaining it and we take care of it, then that's how we maintain it. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
He wanted to talk. I don't know.
Who wanted to talk?
That gentleman back there,
What gentleman back where?
raising his hand.
Okay, so non-scheduled visitors, no one else signed in, so you can come up here and speak. You have 3 minutes. Thanks for letting me know.
You're welcome.
And if you could give your name and address, please.
My name is Angelo Lambros. My new address, after 30 years in Homewood, my wife and I just recently moved here last week. My address is 18128 Tennessee Lane. I am on the corner of the pond. We looked at several homes and made the decision to move at that location a week ago because of the pond. It is spectacular to open up the shades and look out and see it. Now, people can say one thing or another, but nothing replaces looking at that pond, looking at the ducks, looking at the geese, looking at the people fishing. We spend a lot of money making this transition, and the only reason we went there opposed to other locations in Orland was because of the pond, the area, and how well kept everything is. And it's a little alarming to think we spend all this money to open up our shades and look at weeds. I have seen these ponds in Homewood and other places. It is not pleasant, and I don't think it favors the people on the pond. I think it takes away the value of the property, and after investing the money that my wife and I have put into this and all the other people in that pond, I think this is a wrong decision, and it's one that is really disturbing after just moving here a week ago. So I really hope that in honor of the people on that pond and the people in the area, you will seriously look at this and not take this situation lightly. There's ideas you can do with rocks, but leave it open, leave the grass out, and let people enjoy what they spent thousands of dollars for, opposed to making us believe we've wasted our time coming here. So please, reevaluate this decision. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We're adjourned. We will meet back at 25 after to start the regular board meeting.